All right, we are going to get started with our second interview here. Thanks, everybody, once again for being here at Football Fridays.
Sloppy seconds after Tim,
No, we are so excited to have with us one of the greatest fullbacks in Notre Dame history, a former captain of the Notre Dame football team. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Marc Edwards. So, Marc, you grew up in the Cincinnati area in Ohio. Growing up, were you a Notre Dame fan?
I was not a Notre Dame fan. And I've told this story before, and you guys might boo me initially, but when I was growing up, you know, in middle school, and I think it was my 8th and 9th grade year was the 88, 89, when Notre Dame was on a 23, 24 game win streak. And I was actually rooting for Miami to beat them the night they beat them. I know. But, you know, I kind of saw the light after that. You know, fast forward a couple of years, Notre Dame starts recruiting me, and then I start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. All right, I know I'm going to get a great education. I know I'm going to graduate. I know that, you know, there's going to be a great alumni association that I'm going to be a part of at some point. I'm going to play every game on national TV. I'm going to have a chance to win a national title. The fullback position here at Notre Dame under Lou Holtz was not just a blocking, you know, position like it would have been at Ohio State had I gone there and blocked for Eddie George. So you start putting those pieces of the puzzle together, and it kind of becomes a no-brainer for me at that point. And, you know, ever since then, you know, I've been, you know, blue and gold in my veins, and, you know, it was definitely made the right decision, and I couldn't imagine going anywhere else.
And we were lucky to have you. Your first year, your freshman year, was 1993. Obviously, that was an incredible year for the team, and we should have been named national champions. Does it still bother you that we don't have that official designation?
Given that I now live in the state of Florida, yes, it bothers me a lot. You know, I get down there all the time, and I tell people, you know, that was as far as I was concerned, that was the Bobby Bowden Lifetime Achievement Award for them winning the national title that year. You know, they'd finished in the top 4 or 5 straight years in a row, and they'd never won one. You know, maybe we didn't deserve it because we did, you know, lose to Boston College on that last-second field goal, but they certainly did not deserve it over us.
Your freshman year, you weren't a starter, but I think you led the team in rushing touchdowns. Were you surprised that you had a role right away on such a talented team and to such a talented backfield?
Yeah, I came from a smaller high school that wasn't a football power. I think I was the first Division I recruit in over 10 years at our school, and I'm not sure there's been one since. So me going to, you know, coming to a big powerhouse like this, I didn't know whether I was going to play or whether I wasn't. You know, could have came here and sat on the bench all 4 years. So it was a leap of faith coming here. But, you know, for all the other reasons I already described, I knew it was the right choice, you know, whether I played or not. But, yeah, I mean, there was – I remember I walked into – like, we had freshman camp for 3 or 4 days, and I come out there, and, you know, we're not in pads at the time, but I'm out running pass routes and things like out of the backfield versus the other linebackers who were all, you know, high school Americans and whatnot. And I'm beating them pretty good, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And then a couple of days later, the upperclassmen show up, and, you know, Jeff Burris and Tim Ruddy and you know, just Bryant Young and Jim Flanagan and all these guys, Anthony Peterson, Pete Bursich. I'm looking at these guys, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know, I mean, I went from, you know, feeling pretty good about myself to, you know, bottom of the rung, and you know, kind of slowly earned a little bit of PT and got in the first game a little bit, and then kind of progressively more. But the only reason I led the team in touchdowns was because I was part of, you know, Holtz ran that T formation, and I was a fullback on goal line. So I think I had eight touchdowns that year maybe, and, you know, I think 6 of them were for like 1 yard out. So.
Well, you didn't just run it from 1 yard out. You know, by your junior year in '95, you really had a breakout year. Had, I think, over 1,000 all-purpose yards and 12 touchdowns, and really became a fan favorite. And I think one of the keys to that was your running style and how you'd kind of bowl over people. And where did that come from? That style? Is it attitude? Is it talent? What made you able to kind of run over good defenses?
I think it was born out of necessity. if you can't outrun somebody, you're going to have to figure out another way to get the job done. But I think it just comes from my background and how I grew up and where I grew up. We were kind of a tough little blue-collar town, and, I kind of embodied that, I guess, and took a lot of pride in it. I knew I wasn't the fastest guy out there, and I wasn't supernaturally gifted, so I had to work my tail off in the weight room and out in the conditioning field and everything else just to compete. And that's just, like I said, a lot of guys, like you mentioned, it wasn't my athletic talent so much that really got me there. I think it was just the determination and the heart that I put into it. And it's not the stats that necessarily people remember me for. I think it's the way that I played, as you mentioned.
Yeah. We're playing USC this weekend, obviously, and I was reading on the internet this morning and saw that Keyshawn Johnson addressed USC's practice yesterday, and I thought that was funny because this is 20 years ago this weekend. USC came in, they were undefeated. Keyshawn Johnson was a Heisman Trophy candidate. They were ranked, I think, 5th in the country. Why don't you remind the crowd what happened in that game 20 years ago?
Well, we'd gotten off to a rocky start that year, 95. We lost to Northwestern in the opening game, and that's before Northwestern, anybody thought they were any good. They ended up, going 10-1, 11-1 that year. I think they lost the bowl game, but, they had a pretty darn good team. We didn't know that at the time, and we lost to them, won a few games. Then we lost a tough one at Ohio State, and then I think we came into the USC game. We were 5-2, and we'd beaten USC 10 or 11 straight years, and we tied them, I think. So there was about 11 years in a row they hadn't beaten us. And this was finally the year. John Robinson came back, and this was the year they were finally going to stick it to us. And they came on a day kind of similar like today, a little chilly. The guys were over there in their sweatshirts, and they were kind of cold on the other side of the field. And from the opening kickoff, we just took it to them. We out-physicaled them. We hit them. The defense made some unbelievable plays, and, we just moved the ball up and down the field on them. And, I was fortunate enough to, once again, have a couple of those short touchdowns and, had a pretty good game against them.
I think you're underselling it there with a pretty good game. You had 3 touchdowns, ran for a 2-point conversion, and on a trick play, you threw a 2-point conversion to Ron Powless.
Yeah.
Was that the best game you ever played?
I don't know. I mean, I had a lot of games where, I had – 70, 80 yards. Well, not a lot of games, a handful of games maybe. 70, 80 yards, rushing, a couple completes, a couple catches. But I think it was probably my most complete game here and one of the most meaningful for sure. I mean, I had one 100-yard game like a week or two later against Boston College when we finally got that monkey off our back after they beaten us, the previous 2 years. But all around, I definitely feel that was one of my best games.
You were in the same backfield as Autry Denson. You were his lead blocker a lot. He's obviously now the running backs coach here at Notre Dame. What leadership did you see from him as a player, and did you kind of expect him to go into coaching?
You know what? He was he came in real unassuming at first because he kind of got bounced around at first. He came in as a corner. I remember in freshman, or during training camp that year, we were running some goal line, and that was the only time we ever went live in practice was during goal line drills, and and I'd smashed him pretty good once or twice. So I think I got his attention and his respect very, very quickly. So then they moved him over to the offensive side that year, and he just kind of followed my lead, and just he soaked up everything that I was offering him with Coach Mosley. Earl Mosley was a running back coach. What he was there, and just a real good, solid kid. And obviously, he's turned into a heck of a man now.
You were named a captain for your senior year. That ended up being Coach Holtz's last year on the sideline here. What did it mean to you to be a captain with Lou Holtz in his last year?
I think I forced him out. I think he had enough of me, I guess. But no, Holtz was. The way he would motivate you. Everybody here has seen him speak at one point or another, and he was like that every day. Before the games, there was always some new wrinkle that he came up with to get you fired up. And, then there was a lot of the same stuff, goes from time to time, the plan and everything else. He had, there was a big seven-point plan, and he went through it every day, so it was ingrained in our brains for the longest time. But you know, you don't appreciate Holtz at the time as much as you appreciate him later on down the road, because Holtz's philosophy in coaching was he's going to put as much pressure on you in practice so you don't feel it during the games. So I would go to practice, especially as a young player that's playing. So my freshman and sophomore year when I was playing, I used to dread going over to practice because I knew he was going to chew me out for something. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know what part of practice it was going to happen, but I knew I was going to get chewed out. And, there was the offense would practice on one field, and then like 2 fields over, the defense would practice with the scout team. And, I think, the first 2 years or so, I just wore a path between the offense and defense because he would keep sending me down to scout team. And, it was over the little things, too. I mean, if I was in my stance and I was supposed to take a lead step, and instead I took a crossover step first, regardless of the outcome of the play, he was down the field chewing me out and belittling me in front of everybody. And, it worked because, come game time, I don't ever remember him. I think maybe one game he ever got, started yelling during the game. But at practice, it was no holds barred.
Yeah. You said one of the reasons you chose Notre Dame was because of how Coach Holtz used the fullback. The fullback has obviously kind of disappeared from both college and the pros now. What do you sort of make of the disappearance of the fullback in football?
Kids ask me nowadays, you used to play football, at college and the pros. Like, yeah. He's like, what position did you play? I said, I played fullback. He's like, what's that? You know what? I think it'll come back a little bit again. I mean, it'll never be like it was in the 80s and 90s. It's just football is so much more innovative now. But a lot of times, the teams that are having a lot of success still use a fullback. Seattle's won some Super Bowls, and San Fran under Harbaugh, was right up there. And they're a 2-back offense, and it's not as pretty, it's not as exciting. But, you can still get the job done that way. But I think it'll come back a little bit, but it'll never be like it was back in your 70s, 80s, and through the 90s, early 90s.
You ended up getting drafted in the second round by the 49ers, had a long career, almost a decade in the NFL. One of our audience members earlier asked Tim Brown who the best quarterback he played with was. You when you first started out in the NFL, you had Steve Young. You ended up with Tom Brady. Who's the best quarterback you ever played with?
Well, when I was playing with Tom, he was still pretty young at the time. My first year there was the year Bledsoe was our starter, and then Tom got hurt, or Bledsoe got hurt in the second game, and Tom kind of stepped in, and we protected him that year. Our main offense, our core offense, was 2 tight ends, 2 backs, and a receiver that year, Troy Brown. And Tom maybe threw for 180 to 200 yards a game, 1 touchdown, and we ran the heck out of the ball and played good defense. We were. I think we were 18th in the league in offense and 15th in the league in defense that year. But we were top 5 in the red zone, and we were top 5 in turnover margin. And that's really where we kind of made our hay. But you could see it, kind of starting that second year, because we opened him up a little bit more, and he started having some 300-yard games. And, he's really grown so much more after I left the Patriots. And, what he's turned into is just absolutely amazing.
You got a big ring there on your finger. What's your fondest memory from that Super Bowl run with the Pats?
Oh, man. Yeah, well, we had the Snow Bowl tuck rule game. I mean, everybody remembers the tuck rule. And, I don't make the rules. I just play by them. And that was the rule back then. So it worked out pretty well. But the Snow Bowl was an amazing game. When I got up that day, it was the Saturday night, 8 o'clock game. When I got up that day, there was no snow on the ground. There was no snow on the ground. It didn't start snowing until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by game time, it was an absolute blizzard. You couldn't see any of the lines. They would blow them off and shovel them off at every timeout. But by the time play resumed, it was already, they were covered up again. And, from the numbers in was nothing but mud, and from the numbers out was nothing but ice. So you couldn't have the right cleats on. And, it was just one of those games that everybody remembers. I mean, more people remember, what happened kind of during that game than almost the Super Bowl when we beat the Rams, which it was the last. It was at the Superdome, and it was the last game on AstroTurf, and that's the greatest show on turf with Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt and Kurt Warner and all those guys. we beat the greatest show on turf, and that was pretty exciting as well.
You've remained really close with the university in the years since you graduated. You're often, back here for football weekends and generous with your time, and you're on the Monogram Club board. What is it about Notre Dame? What makes you stay so committed and close to the university?
I mean, it's a cliche, but Notre Dame's a special place. It's different than any other college campus, in the country. I mean, if you look at other places, if you walk around this place, you're not going to see any trash anywhere. Why? Because the people that are here respect the grounds. And they respect the grounds because of what Notre Dame means, what Notre Dame has done for them. And there's no other place like that. And, when I'm out and about, wherever I am, I meet somebody from Notre Dame, there's an instant bond there. I don't care if, they're an athlete, if they're not an athlete, or, just a student, or, just a Subway alum. There's an instant bond between Notre Dame people. And I just think, coming back here reminds me of that. It reminds me of, all the great times that I had here. And, I look forward to bringing my family here. I mean, my girls are so busy with soccer and everything else. I never have a chance for them to come up here. But, I love getting back here, and I get back here as much as I can.
We said you had a long career in the NFL. What have you been doing since you stopped playing football?
Well, a few years after I got out of the league, I hooked up through a Notre Dame alumni contact of mine. I started with a company called Speed Shield. It was kind of a startup that it's kind of a black box system for forklifts where it lets somebody kind of monitor their entire fleet online. The operator's got to swipe a card, and if they hit something, it sends out emails and tracks what the operators are doing and whatnot. And we kind of serve as the wholesaler, and we work with forklift dealers around the country. And I worked for them for a couple of years, kind of got them going, and then I went out on my own and just started working for the dealers on a consulting basis. And I also just started a brand new project, and you guys can come over to the Fan Fest over in the Joyce Center tomorrow. You can kind of check out a little bit about it. But I just acquired a display case company. So we got, football cases and jersey holders and all this other stuff. And kind of what we're doing is we bought a big trailer that used to be, used as like a medical kind of trailer, but it opens up, and we've turned it into what we call the roaming man cave. So we got TVs set up in there, and we got the displays, and footballs and helmets and stuff like that in the display cases in there, and we'll have 2 or 3 TVs going with the games on and stuff like that. And we'll be at Fan Fest from noon to 7 tomorrow.
I'm sure you keep up with the team here, and you watch all the games, and you know a thing or two about beating SC. As you look towards tomorrow's game, what do you expect to see?
I think one of two things. One, there's no way in the world USC will dominate us. I mean, I think our boys up front, everything else. It could be a close game, or we could just step on their throat right from the beginning, and that's kind of where I'm leaning. Given what happened last year, given the disarray that USC is in right now, it's not like we're playing Navy and there's that mutual respect. Right. There's a mutual hatred for Notre Dame, USC, period. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to step on their neck while they're down.
I like where your head's at there. We're gonna take a few questions from the audience now. Raise your hand if you got a question for Mark. We'll have some microphones coming around.
Yeah, that Notre Dame USC game that you did so well in, you didn't tell us the final score. What was it?
I want to say it was 38-10.
Go Irish! Thank you.
I think we got a New York Mets fan over here.
Uh-oh.
Can you compare and contrast playing under Coach Holtz and Coach Belichick?
You know what? One of the things, Belichick was not a yell and scream guy. Holtz really was. Holtz was more of a rah-rah guy as well. Belichick doesn't give you inspirational speeches. Belichick is exactly what he portrays himself to be on TV. He hates everything that is not related to football. He doesn't like doing the media stuff. He doesn't like, the dog and pony shows, going out and making the appearances and all that. Whereas that's one of the things Holtz excelled at, going out, speaking to the crowd, speaking to the pep rallies, those type of things. Holtz is definitely a much more eloquent speaker than Belichick, but I think Belichick is probably more cerebral with the X's and O's.
I remember when you came in with Randy Kinder and Robert Farmer, great backs, all three of you guys. I'm just wondering, was it tough kind of sharing the ball? I mean, all you guys were big stars. I remember it was a very explosive class. Was that tough?
Not really, because what was interesting, Ron Paulus being back. The first time he was back, I was sitting up in his office, and that's when Brady Quinn and those guys were putting up huge numbers, right? Throwing the ball all over the place. And he's like, Mark, I was looking at, our stat lines and our points per game and all this other stuff, and we were putting up even more yards than those guys, but we were just doing it differently. We were running the ball for 250, 300 yards a game, and, so there was plenty, because, with Randy Kinder and Robert Farmer, you had Autry Denson back there, too. So, I think a junior year, I think three of us had like between 700 and 800 yards, and like Robert Farmer maybe had 500, and there were plenty of carries to go around.
Hi, Mark. Speaking of things you left out of the USC game, you're a very humble guy, and the reality is you're only the second player to get carried off the field at Notre Dame by his teammates, which has got to be an incredible thing to have experienced. But being that you're so humble, I met you 2 years ago, and instead of talking about your Super Bowl ring or getting carried off the field, you talked about your daughter and her soccer career and how you were so excited to get to take her around college visits. I'm just wondering, what is that dynamic, having been a big star and then transferring into being a parent, raising kids, and trying to instill in them the same course you took?
Well, I'm not, Marc Edwards, the Notre Dame football player or the NFL football player at home. I'm Taya's dad. I'm Ella's dad. I'm, Mark Jr.'s, well, not Mark Jr. My wife hates Mark Jr. We call him Xander. Mark Alexander Edwards. We call him Xander. And my daughter Livy, and to all their friends, I'm their dad. I'm not, the old football player or whatever. They all kind of know, but they really weren't. They didn't see it. They didn't. They saw a little bit of film from YouTube or whatever they do now. But I really enjoy that aspect of it, because now I get to go out and I get to watch them compete, and it's kind of a helpless feeling. I mean, I guess it's kind of like being a coach or whatever. You're involved, but you really can't affect the outcome of the game, just by wishing them they'll do well or whatever. But it's more challenging, watching them than it was for me going out there and doing it myself, because I had a direct part in it and I could control what was going on. And now it's very different, but it's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. I travel a lot with them. Girls, play, all over the darn country, really, but a lot all through the Southwest, and it's a lot of fun.
Any more questions from the audience here? Got one right there. I think it's a teammate of yours.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how CJ Procise is such a breakout star running back this year. What's made him be so great?
You know what? I don't know, but he's certainly stepped in and done amazing. I know one of the things that's helped CJ out is we have a dominant offensive line. When Malik went down, everybody was, oh gosh, there goes the season. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to be just fine, because those five guys up front are big and strong and nasty. And if you can control the line of scrimmage in football, if you can protect the passer, you could do a lot of great things. I mean, just look what DeMarco Murray did with Dallas' offensive line last year, and then this year he's darn near invisible. A great offensive line is going to make an average running back great. I'm not saying CJ's average by any stretch, but I wasn't worried about the injuries to Folston and to Malik. So but Precise is explosive. I mean, he can run. He looks like he's a pretty big, strong guy as well. But I mean, he can fly. When he gets out there, like Autry always got caught from behind. He got the tough yards. But when Precise gets rolling, there's nobody catching him.
Let's hope nobody catches him tomorrow. I'm going to invite Dolly Duffy up here, the executive director of the Notre Dame Alumni Association.
So I got a chance to lay eyes on Marc today, which was great fun because we were both down at the Tallahassee game, and he tried to get to the event we were doing, and he was thwarted by traffic every step of the way. So we texted back and forth, and if you think he was great tonight, he couldn't have been kinder on text, and I think it just says everything about Marc. Marc, thank you so much for being here. We have a small gift for you.
Oh, well, thank you.